University of Nebraska-Lincoln's theme at Husker Harvest Days last week was strengthening the state of beef. On average, there are 2.3 million head of cattle on feed in Nebraska, and more than 5 million cattle are fed and marketed in the state every year. Its commercial red meat production of 7.1 billion pounds led the country again in 2011. In Grand Island, we talked with Matt Spangler about matching beef genetics to a specific environment.
So the concept of allowing genetics to fit your environment is important, particularly as we think about reproduction. Cattle that don't fit their environment, particularly high-performance cattle and low feed input environments, often have trouble rebreeding. So it really boils down to allowing cattle to express their genetic potential, but being in sync with the environment such that they can maintain and have longevity within that herd.
So what do you all look at? Let's take Nebraska, for example. What do you look at Nebraska that would fit a gene?
So I think in low input environments, and of course this year's drought brings to mind the challenges that can come with a low feed availability kind of environment. We think about moderating mature cow size. Obviously larger cows tend to eat more, but another hidden thing might be milk production. We know that heavier milking cows tend to require more nutrients, not only when they're lactating, but also when they're dry because of larger visceral organ sizes. So as we're selecting our next herd bull, we might think about selecting bulls that have lower, more conservative mature weight EPDs, and certainly selecting bulls that have lower milk EPDs as well, particularly if we're keeping replacement heifers. If we're purchasing replacement heifers, then we need to purchase them having some knowledge of their genetic background such that we're optimizing mature size and milk to go with our feed availability and thus our environment. And again, there's plenty of EPDs to do that, mature size, milk EPDs, and several breeds have economic indices that could be used for producers that are retaining their own replacement heifers, producers that are concerned about feed input costs as well.
Is it even something then that once you narrow down what you want, it still takes time to specifically get in the groove, so to speak?
It does take time to make genetic change, but those traits that we talked about, like mature weight, is highly heritable. So of all the traits we think about, we can make rapid progress in that trait. Milk production is moderately heritable, so we can make some genetic progress in that as well relatively rapidly. The neat thing is, with genomic technology now, we're increasing the accuracy of those kinds of EPDs, allowing us to choose with more confidence bulls that are in the range that we prefer.
Contrast it for me. What would be not necessarily opposite of Nebraska, but something that wouldn't be a fit for Nebraska, that would be a fit somewhere else?
So you could look at a place, and this year it's hard to find, but has extremely great resources, extremely high feed availability, that maybe from a biological standpoint could maintain animals that are larger in mature weight, even heavier in milk production. I stress from a biological standpoint, economics can be a bit different, but traditionally we think of places perhaps in Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, where the grass resource is a bit different than we'd find in the sandhills of Nebraska. So it really is important to think about your location, your production environment when you're selecting herd bulls.
With what you look at in a year like this where it's forcing producers to sell off their herds at a greater amount than they want, how much does that throw a wrench into what you're trying to do overall for your herd?
It does change things some in the sense that you may have to cull females, maybe you don't retain as many replacements as you have in the past, but a breeding goal is a long-term goal. And you have to realize that things like this certainly are hopefully short-lived. So you have to stay the course, although it does bring to mind maybe your mature weight's too much, maybe your milk production's too heavy, and you see those things manifested in a year like this, so it allows you to correct for it. But again, breeding objectives are long-term goals, so it's important to stay the course, keep your eye on the ball, and continue to make improvements year after year.